Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm so excited to talk about how we are transforming the way enterprise developers can deploy, test, and run their applications using Azure Deployment Environments. I am Sagar Lankala, and I'm a product manager for Azure Deployment Environments. We also have Guthan, software engineer on our team. As we are presenting during the session, I'm sure you'll have some questions. For those in the room, please scan the QR code, and you can submit your questions. And for those joining us on the web, you can submit the questions directly in the web chat, and we have our best-in-class experts in the room answering questions as we speak. As developers or platform teams supporting the developers, we all know how important it is to test our applications as early as possible. I guess we all agree that early detection of bugs or issues is very important and helps us save a ton of effort and money. How many of you agree? Show of hands. That's a lot. Thank you. This slide outlines a lot of data and research, and in short, data agrees with us all. Developers spend a lot of time in fixing bugs, especially with the increasing complexity of the future-ready applications. It's even more important to identify and fix those bugs earlier in the software development lifecycle. When we spend so much time on a specific activity, we might as well have a great experience and have fun while doing it. But the current processes in gaining access to the application infrastructure that is required to deploy and test our apps early are still very manual, entail a lot of steps, slowing us down. How many of you have to read through some wiki, which easily goes out of date, create an internal ticket, have a back and forth with your admins before you can finally access the environment that you need? Does that resonate with you all? Yeah, so we see it's pretty common with many enterprises, sometimes taking days, if not weeks, to get a working environment, severely constraining developers to ship high-quality applications swiftly, and it's also not a great experience. At its core, developer experience is all about eliminating toil, and we need to get the mundane workflows out of our everyday lives and make it more productive at the same time. In today's session, we will focus on showcasing how Azure Deployment Environments delivers a positive developer experience by helping developers stay in their flow, focus on the code that only they can write, easily deploy and test their applications, and ship high-quality app code, and at the same time, maximize their productivity. First, let's talk about how you can shift to a new paradigm in app infrastructure provisioning. Azure Deployment Environments helps you to make that shift by empowering developers to quickly and easily self-serve the application infrastructure required to deploy and test your applications. Platform engineers or dev leads can securely provide curated project-specific templates sourced directly from the source control repositories. And platform engineers can also pre-configure all of the enterprise governance and settings so that they are confident that the resources that get created are in adherence with your enterprise governance and security policies, including the Azure policies that are configured as per the well-architected framework. Before we dive into the experience, let me invite one of our customers to directly talk about how they are taking advantage of Azure Deployment Environments. Please welcome Clemens, CTO, Capgemini.
Thank you, Sagar. So we are using Azure Deployment Environments already for years. So it's not a real new offering, but it evolves very, very nicely. And we are working as Capgemini very strong with Sagar and team to envision and work around all those new capabilities there. And we are not only using Azure Deployment Environment for testing, for app development, and all those kinds of deployment challenges what normal teams have, but we're also using it for learning and development. Because learning and development also requires environments, requires hands-on experience. So what we are doing, we are creating Azure deployment environments, environments for teams, connected with a GitHub repo, so that they can start learning how to use those new cloud services from Azure. And that's actually also what we are doing for envisioning new ideas. We are running hackathons with Azure deployment environments, so provisioning those environments for teams so that they can start playing, start experimenting around new technologies and new capabilities. Definitely, proof of concepts is also part of that. Demos, we are using Azure deployment environments for everything. So now, one customer from Capgemini, Unilever Food Solutions, that's actually this one request. They wanted to envision what they could do with GenAI, with Azure AI services. They want to enable all their teams to work with GenAI solutions like Azure AI services, semantic search, and other kinds of capabilities. But they also had the challenge, hey, when we give that to all our teams, not everybody is that experienced in infrastructure. We are hearing stories that it can become quite costly, and we definitely need to take care our data is secure. So dear Capgemini, can you help us with that? Starting with that kind of environments so that teams can work around those new ideas together with the business around GenAI. And that's actually what we started to do. We started to, based on our knowledge about GenAI solutions, started to make Azure deployment project templates for every knowledgeable infrastructure what you can think about. It was with AI search, with semantic search, Cosmos DB, chat solutions, all the kinds of items there. And we gave those templates via Azure deployment environments to the teams. And those teams are starting to select it and starting to provision it. But next to those kinds of templates, for them very easily to start building those solutions, we also put a lot of policies in place. So policies, Azure policies, so that they are starting in with the right cost boundaries, that they didn't provision very big machines, not complete AKS clusters, for example, so that they drain all the Azure consumption. So that is what we started to give them, and the self-servicing capabilities of Azure deployment environments give them the comfortable feeling to move on like this. And this is then how we get feedback from those teams. The feedback from those teams is that they see that they are from 0 to hero. And I love that sentence because they actually just push a button via self-service. And they said, OK, I want to build a chatbot with these kinds of Azure AI services, or I want to use semantic search for my rec patterns. And they just clicked it, and they knew that they were in control. They started in control, they stayed in control. And I love that sentence, and actually we used that start in control, stay in control to write an ebook together with Microsoft, Secure Enterprise DevOps Environments, how they can leverage these kinds of capabilities of Azure deployment environments to move forward there. You see the URL of the book below there, and there are more of those kinds of enterprise DevOps ebooks behind it. So one big benefit I also see for us as a global organization is that we can provision this throughout the globe. And we recently just finished a hackathon where 352 teams in 39 different countries were hacking around with GenAI solutions for certain industries. And those are the benefits what we can get when we leverage Azure, when we leverage Azure deployment environments across the globe. Thank you, Sagar.
Thank you so much, Clemens, for joining. Thanks to Clemens for sharing the exciting ways in which Capgemini and its customers are leveraging Azure deployment environments to transform developer workflows. Just like Capgemini, there are many other customers across industries who are benefiting from Azure deployment environments today. Now let's shift gears and look at the experiences in action. We will start with the delightful experiences that Azure deployment environments helps developers to stay in their flow and do their best work.
Awesome. Hello, Build. How's everybody doing? I'm 𝗬𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, and I am a developer on the Azure Deployment Environments team. So I spend most of my time helping ship features that are getting y'all into the cloud easier, faster, more secure. But today, I'm a developer on this eShop on web application. So picture this. We're getting ready for a big Memorial Day sale. I've picked up all the front-end work, and I'm really excited to get going and change this all around to have that marketing, have those sales, make it a little festive, and get that live in time for Memorial Day. So of course, there's a lot of components that can happen, and I want to make sure that these tests, these code can be tested and deployed and verified before it goes live for this critical sale. On the surface, it seems like a very simple, straightforward application, but if we take a look under the hood, there's a lot going on. This is a really complicated infrastructure, and even the simplest apps can involve a lot of resources to get up and going and have that fully connected, ready-to-go experience. So for me as a developer, if I were to have to go create all of these complex resources, connect it myself, it could take anywhere from hours to days to get all of these resources configured. And that opens up the ability for me to make mistakes or potentially introduce security holes. This is stuff that we want to avoid, and I want to, as the developer, be able to focus on my code. So what Azure Deployment Environments allows me to do is my platform engineer will go and create an infrastructure as code template alongside any custom runners for actions or other things that need to be able to fully hook up to our enterprise environment. And that will make it so that it's ready to go. Because another thing is, I as an engineer, even if I could go about all this, and even if I do it flawlessly, my enterprise might not want me to have the control to go do these resources myself. We want that lockdown control and consistent structure that gives us that security and best practices by default. So going ahead over to my dev box, we'll see what this looks like in action. It all starts in the developer portal. Azure Deployment Environments is fully integrated with this developer portal, so we get all of my dev boxes and deployment environments all in one space to keep me in my flow and have everything at a glance ready to see. So as we can see, we've got a couple environments that are available to me. Each one will show up as one of these cards on the page that give me a quick idea of what the environment is, what the type is, and easy access to all of that infrastructure that has been deployed via Azure Deployment Environments. And creating new environments is really easy. All I have to do is go create a new environment, give it a quick name. So we're working on the Memorial Day sale. And then after I name this, I can go about, it's already in the project that I'm working with my team. I can select the type of environment. So in this case, I'm just developing. I want to run those changes locally, see what's happening. I select an environment definition, and this is what allows my infrastructure admin to say, this is all configured for you. All I have to do is know which one is important. I can see which catalogs those are in, fully expand if I need to find more. We've got a complex environment going on. And since we know that I'm not going to need this environment after the Memorial Day sale passes, I can set it up to expire automatically so that I don't have to worry about burning the budgets after this is no longer needed. So I'll go ahead and configure that to expire tomorrow, since I know that my changes will be in by then. And then the parameters are what my platform engineer has specified that I need to input in order to get this working. With the power of the extensibility model, they have enabled it to where, since these environments can take a couple minutes to deploy, there's a webhook that will tell me exactly when my infrastructure is ready to use. So here, I'm adding a little bit of context to that webhook so that in that notification, my team and I have context on what this environment was created for, and we can have that grounded message when that comes in. So I'll go ahead and say, test sale changes, and just hit create. And as we can see, immediately a new card pops up for that environment as that's being deployed. And behind the scenes, more is going on than just that deploying infrastructure. We've got all those other things that my platform engineer has configured for me to connect this into our enterprise environment, do any configurations that we need, and everything will be ready to go as soon as it's finished deploying. One example of what's happening behind the hood is there are certain things that will need to be configured with passwords with the certain types of resources that we have. So that I don't have to worry about that and that security, my admin has configured it to where this automatically generates those secure passwords, strong passwords in Key Vault and uses it throughout the process. So that's one less thing that I have to think about as a developer, and I can go straight into my code. So as a developer, I love to live in the IDE, naturally. That's where all my code is happening. So we've got all this awesome infrastructure, but how do I get my code there? That's where Azure Development Environments plus the Azure Developer CLI really comes in handy. The Azure Developer CLI allows me to, straight in my editor, use this terminal to package up my changes and throw it onto that deployed infrastructure. I can either create new environments via this or connect to those existing ones like we just saw in the dev portal. So here we can see I've made some changes. I've added a cute little Memorial Day banner. I've added those slash prices, all those other things to really emphasize that sale. And then before I even commit this code, I can go ahead and say AZD environment list. And after this command runs, we can see all of those environments that are available to me to put that code on. I've already got one of them enabled by default, so we're just going to go ahead and deploy that code that I've changed to that with a simple AZD deploy. So this is packaging up all those services and putting that straight onto my infrastructure so that I get that real-time live environment. And this allows me to, without all that back and forth of doing those full PRs, I can verify and know that my changes are solid before we go through any of those processes and really speed up that development process. So as this is going, I'm going to switch to one that I did slightly earlier just so that we can get a little bit of a speed up there. And clicking into that, the Azure Developer CLI will give me this endpoint. We've hooked it up to where it'll tell us what that output is. And once I open that, I can see these changes are live. I see this new Memorial Day sale banner, and I see all of these prices are slashed. So now I'm feeling pretty good about it. I know I can make that PR with confidence. And if I go back to the developer portal, or the Visual Studio Code, I can go ahead and commit these changes, saying changes for Memorial Day sale. Commit those changes with those saves. Push that straight to my branch, and go create a pull request. So if we refresh this page, we'll see that there was new changes pushed, compare and pull request. I'll go ahead and change this to Memorial Day sale. And as I create this pull request, my platform engineers have also configured this to where it will automatically, on creation of this, kick off a GitHub app that will go ahead and deploy these fresh changes in a PR environment type and send that to my team to be able to review. So we keep talking about those Teams webhooks. So we can see what that is looking like here, where we can see environments are created for PR verification. We can see any of those other webhooks that are happening with all of those easy links to the deployments. And that's what the extensibility model allows us to configure. So if we switch over to just seeing those actions in progress, we can see that we've had all of these other successful environment deployments. We can go into those details. We can see what was going on to get all of that hooked up and working. And then I'll go ahead and switch back to the slides.
As a developer, you no longer need to go through the same manual redundant process to gain access to your application infrastructure. You also need not worry about making decisions on the subscriptions or the resource groups in which these resources get created, or even worse, get overwhelmed with all the services that are there in the Azure portal, not knowing where to go, what to create, and how to access the resources. As you have seen in the demos, you can quickly and easily create this cloud-based infrastructure by using curated and project-specific templates that are made available for your team. You can also just provide some basic information that you're already familiar with, like the project that you are working in, what is the type of environment that you would like to create, and any parameters that you would like to configure, and create the environment. Boom, all of the complex and numerous resources that you require to deploy and run your applications are readily available for you. You can create environments intuitively from either the developer portal or directly from where you live, that is your IDEs or the CLI. As developers, you also need not worry about the orphaned resources that might burn your team's budget. You can configure the environment to auto-expire, and the service will take care of cleaning up the resources as soon as they're no longer in use. It's all about providing a great developer experience, and it's at the core of Azure Deployment Environments. We would like to make coding more fun, and when you are building cloud-based applications, deploying and testing them, and take the drudgery out. Azure Deployment Environments is focused on enterprise developers. And obviously, none of this would be possible if the service don't integrate well with the enterprise governance your organizations have in place. Let's now take a look at how platform engineers can take advantage of the built-in guardrails and pre-configure all the settings, policies, while empowering developers to self-serve this app infrastructure. Let's first start with the high-level workflow of Azure Deployment Environments. As a platform engineer, you can configure the service before developers can start using to create environments. You can securely provide curated, customized set of templates sourced directly from your source control repositories defined in your favorite IAC frameworks, leveraging ADE's extensibility model. You can configure the various types of environments that you would like your developers to create, and for each type of environment, you can pre-configure the subscriptions in which the resources automatically get created in, and the managed identities that will be used to perform the deployments on behalf of the developer, and finally, all the permissions that the developers would get after the environments are created. With all of this pre-configuration and the templates, the developer, as we have seen in the earlier demo, is able to create environments without having to worry about the Azure governance or even the enterprise governance related structures. Let's dive in again to see what that experience looks like.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. But this time, I'm not a developer. I'm a platform engineer. So if I go ahead and switch back to this view, as a platform engineer, I live in the Azure portal. Portal is where I'm comfortable. And if we go directly to that Azure Deployment Environments landing page, now we have generally available quick start templates to where it's even easier to get going and try out Azure Deployment Environments from an end-to-end scenario. Clicking this button, it will go ahead and configure everything. I have a couple short inputs, and then I can create a dev center, a project. I'll sync a catalog of curated templates curated by the Azure Deployment Environments team to get started and seeing deployment environments in action. And it'll assign all the roles to just be able to wait for that to deploy, click create, and then it's there. But since we've been looking at this demo that has a bunch of stuff pre-configured, let's take a look under the hood and see how I configured those environments. So here, under Azure Deployment Environments, we have a couple key resources. Our Dev Center is where that kind of umbrella, high-level configuration happens. That's going to apply settings and configurations across multiple development teams. So this is where all of your shared resources happen. If there's shared templates across all of those teams, that's where you can put those kinds of things. But it has that overarching things that will bubble down to all of these projects at that higher level. At the project level, we see basically the view of an individual developer team. This is a lot more granular and a lot more specific to the needs of that specific dev team. And it has a lot of that kind of granular level customization. One of the new things that we have now is project level catalogs, to where I can add infrastructure as code templates along with custom runners with the extensibility model specific to the needs of these dev teams. Because dev teams are different and they have different needs. So we want to be able to meet those dev teams where they're at and get that flexibility for them to ship with confidence. Clicking into the project, we can see, since I've enabled this at the Dev Center level, you have to enable it at the Dev Center for any of these to be possible. So as a platform engineer, I have control over how all of these configurations live. But now I can create catalogs at this level. And all of these will immediately become available to any deployment environment users within this project. So going through the flow of what a catalog looks like, we'll go ahead and create one. Just have to add a simple name, so we'll say project catalog. And then we can see that I can connect to either Azure DevOps or GitHub and import all of my infrastructure as code and any other resources that I need from there as part of this catalog. There's a couple ways that we can connect to it. So previously, we were seeing you could only do ARM templates and you could only do PAT token access to any of these catalogs. But now we have integrations service to service between the Azure Deployment Environment service and these various places where you can have your infrastructure living. So if we look at the GitHub app infrastructure, I've previously installed the GitHub app for Dev Center on this repository, so it becomes available as soon as I sign in with GitHub. We get that service-to-service connection, and then we can see in here any of those repos that I have enabled that access to. So if we go ahead and click eShop on Web, which is the one that we've been working with so far, the other perk of these GitHub apps connections is it's able to load in all of that information for your branches, your folders, all of that. So we get this really nice experience to be able to say, I want to connect that catalog. Additionally, we have the ability to automatically sync these catalogs so that any changes that I make, I don't necessarily have to remember to even come back to this portal and hit the button. Those will automatically be synced at a certain cadence to get those to the developers fast. But obviously, if I want it faster, I can go hit sync myself and have that all set up. So if we go ahead and sync that catalog, this will go and it'll look for all of those environment definitions, import them to this project, and make those available to developers right out of the box. But what is an environment definition? So if we switch back to the IDE, we can see a little bit of what an environment definition looks like. These consist of a metadata file, which is your environment YAML. This is what tells Azure Deployment Environments what is happening and where to look for all of those other components. Defines a couple key parameters and has any of those settings as far as I can either use the native ARM or bicep support provided by the Azure Deployment Environments team, or I can provide my own custom runner that I have configured to deploy with my infrastructure of code of choice, with any of those built-in bells and whistles and other organizational things that are specific to my dev team's needs. This also has a link to where in the repo to look for those IAC templates, because that's kind of the baseline of how we're going about and deploying these applications. And we keep talking about this extensibility model, building custom things, expanding on what Azure Deployment Environments has provided out of the box. But let's see how easy it is to make those changes. So say we've looked at a bunch of webhooks earlier for PRs, environment creations, all of those other things. But sometimes infrastructure can fail to deploy. So what if I want to speed up that process, also send a notification if something goes wrong so that people can take a look and fix things fast if they've got a bad parameter or something else happened. So I'm going ahead and in this script, I'm just enabling that webhook here. And then all I have to do is run this command to run the script that was provided by the Azure Deployment Environments team in that public repository, to connect to my Azure Container Registry, build this image, deploy it up there, and have that immediately available for consumption. So if we go ahead and run, it'll just have me log in so that it can access that Azure Container Registry. And we can see that it's using Docker, it's packaging up that image, and it's throwing it on that Azure Container Registry, all for me, very easy, out of the box. As soon as these changes are ready, all I have to do to have this new runner be used by environment definitions and immediately apply to those, what the developers are working with, all I have to do is go into this environment YAML and change this, instead of the ADE runner that I was using previously, to say project runner. Additionally, we can see that there's these latest versions. So with that, I don't necessarily have to go update this YAML every time that there's a change. This will say, look at my container registry and use the most updated version. So we get all of that security and everything else, best practices built in as much as we want by default. But that's not all we can configure at the project level. I, as the platform engineer, have a lot of flexibility to see what's happening in any of these projects, what my developers are getting up to, and set up configurations depending on what types of environments that they're going to be using. So if we go ahead and look at what an environment type means. My developers just need to know, what type do I need to access? You can assign developers specifically to any of these access levels and need not put them on the entire project as far as access. So for example, prod is something that we keep very locked down. So it's probably a lot more restricted in who gets access to those environment types or what happens there. So if we look at the dev full stack private that we were using earlier, inside, this allows me to specify what subscriptions I want to use for deploying all of these resources so that I can bucket by subscription and have subscription-specific controls there. I can specify what role that any of the environment creators get over the resources that are deployed. So for example, if it's a dev environment, I might allow them higher levels of control, but if it's any other type of environment, I can say just reader or any kind of those things to determine how much flexibility they have over that infrastructure resource. Additionally, I can configure access to certain users or groups of users with certain roles that will be applied to every environment created in these types, no matter what the type is. So for example, if I, as the platform engineer, want to be able to easily click in and help assist with any of those kinds of things and see what's going on, I can assign myself any of those roles that I would need to get started. Back in the project view, developers have a lot of this flexibility to be able to self-service, spin up, spin down. Lots of stuff is happening. But I, as an admin, want to have a high-level view of what's happening in my project. How healthy is my project? What's going on? And what's the cost? So I can go to this environments view and see all of those environments that exist within this specific project. I can see all of their types. I can see the provisioning states, have easy links to all of those resources. I can see when they expire and change those expiries. I can see if there's any security warnings that I should be worried about. And I've got a link to see the cost of each of those environments so that I have a view of how much cost that they're occurring and those kinds of things to keep an eye on my budgets. Additionally, any of these levels of access with the project admin, if I have a dev lead that I want to enable to be able to create any of these project environments or project catalogs or do this kind of management for me, I can assign those roles to my dev lead to help with all of this process.
Thank you, Erica. I would like to just summarize what we have seen in those demos and the value props that you as a platform engineer would get. As a platform engineer, you no longer have to spend all of your time in performing the same repetitive, redundant tasks day in and day out, having back and forth with development teams, creating the same Azure resources, and granting access to the development teams. Azure Deployment Environments enables you to pre-configure all of the settings based on the type of environment, including the subscriptions in which the resources are getting created, managed identities that are actually performing the deployments on behalf of the developer, and the permissions that the development teams will get after the environments are created. You also have a customized view to manage all the environments that are created, along with insights into recommendations from Azure Advisor that includes security recommendations, which is top of mind for everyone now, and deeper cost analysis per environment. These powerful capabilities help complement the well-architected framework, enforce the right set of policies based on the stage of development, and with the confidence that all the resources that are created are well within the guardrails and adhere to the enterprise security and governance policies that you have in place. The ability to attach your own source control repository as a catalog helps you to easily and securely provide curated project-specific templates to your development teams, making it super easy to version, manage, and even encourage inner sourcing of these templates in your organization. With the extensibility model that we introduced last month, you can now configure the environment definitions using your favorite IAC frameworks and further customize the deployments to your organizational needs. As you have seen in the demo earlier, you can bring your own custom container image and leverage it to perform deployments. The extensibility model provides the flexibility for you to customize your deployment workflows based on your unique needs, such as invoking internal APIs or internal systems to dynamically retrieve some data, such as network IPs, and use them during the deployment process. Or even creating some resources like namespaces in a shared AKS cluster and use them for deploying and testing your applications. Today, I'm thrilled to announce some new powerful capabilities that will further enhance your experience with Azure Deployment Environments. To start with, we partnered with our friends at 𝗬𝗲𝗀 to make it incredibly easy for platform engineers and dev teams to perform 𝗬𝗲𝗀 deployments leveraging ADE's extensibility model. You can now directly use the container image published by 𝗬𝗲𝗀, or can even build your own container image using the scripts and the custom workflows that 𝗬𝗲𝗀 has published. Check out the aka.ms links on the slide to learn more and register for the workshop hosted for 𝗬𝗲𝗀 to get a hands-on download of how this works. Each application is unique, and accordingly, the development teams will have specific needs. It's important to provide curated and customized templates that meet the specific needs of those development teams. I'm excited to announce that the support for project-level catalogs is now publicly available. Ability to attach and manage catalogs at the project level enables platform engineers to provide customized project-specific templates to your dev teams. Even better, you can also enable your dev leads to further customize these templates and meet their team's changing needs. And we are not stopping there. Catalog is a very powerful functionality, but at the same time, it's at the critical path of leveraging Azure Deployment Environments. We have been hard at work to enhance the overall catalog management. You can now attach GitHub repositories directly using GitHub app, which is a more streamlined, secure, and robust mechanism to establish service-to-service connections. You can also configure to automatically sync the catalog so that latest versions of the templates are always made available to your dev teams. As a platform engineer, it's really important to track and manage what are the templates that you're providing and handle any potential errors as well. So we have rolled out an enhanced view that helps with better tracking and error handling for these catalog items. Finally, for customers who are using personal access tokens to attach their repos as catalogs and want to keep their key vaults private from the internet, you can now set your key vaults to allow trusted Microsoft services. All these capabilities are publicly available, and you can take advantage of them right away. Finally, we also rolled out a quick start template, and you can easily invoke directly in the service from the service of view to configure the service with one single click. This helps you get started with Azure deployment environments pretty quickly and empower your development teams to experiment and play around with the service. As a platform engineer, we know that your primary goals are related to security, governance, standardization, and cost management. We believe the platform engineering is the approach to achieve these goals. Platform engineering is an evolution of DevOps practices that provides with self-service access to infrastructure within the guardrails set by the central IT teams. There are 3 key motions that will help implement platform engineering: start right, stay right, self-service with guardrails. Start right is all about equipping developers with the self-service tools, enabling them to kickstart their projects quickly while adhering to the organization's best practices and through templates and policies. Stay right, it's all about maintaining compliance as your projects grow and ensuring the developers continue to follow these best practices while at the same time monitoring and managing your costs. And finally, self-service with guardrails is a key foundational principle to empower enterprise developers with self-service within the configured enterprise guardrails and governance policies. Azure Deployment Environments is an integral part of a suite of products that help you implement platform engineering. Other products in the suite include Microsoft DevBox, a ready-to-code machine in the cloud where the developer writes the code. And we also have Azure DevTest Labs. It remains our core product that enables dev and test teams to self-serve test boxes to deploy and test their desktop applications. We are continuing to invest in DevTest Labs and make it even more easier to self-serve ready-to-test machines, leveraging the same customizations and imaging functionalities which you will use to build a ready-to-code dev box. Thank you. Our team is on the journey to give devs, dev leads, and platform engineers a new enhanced experience to deploy, test, and run their cloud-based applications. We believe the new capabilities that we announced today will immensely simplify and optimize your experience with Azure deployment environments. If you're not using deployment environments today already, it is really easy to get started in the Azure portal for free. We had so many sessions at Build this week, where we showcase the latest and greatest in Azure deployment environments, DevBox, and our platform engineering principles. Please take out your cameras now. This is a screenshot that covers all the exciting capabilities that we showcased with all the links that we showcased on the individual slides, just so that you can reference later. And if you missed any of our other related sessions, you can watch them on demand. Let me give a bit of time for you all to capture that. Last but very important, we would love to hear from you to help these sessions make better. Please fill out the survey and tell us how we can keep making these sessions better for you. Thank you so much for joining us.